All right, so today is Sunday, the 26th already of January 2025. Glad to see you all. It's Sunday afternoon, and so we're going to have several questions today. Chris, why don't you go first? Turn your mic on. There you go. You muted it again. You're mute. Hello?
Not now.
There you go. Now you got your microphone on.
So, as far as I know, the term Vipassana meditation is not in the early Buddhist texts, but there are a lot of people who have a lot of ideas. Maybe strongly about it. It's not just Goenka and there are a lot. So I was wondering what you could tell us a little about Vipassana meditation.
Well, I would go so far as to say, Dean, can you turn your microphone off? I think that it's causing an echo. I would say that Goenka was the one who made the word Vipassana kind of ubiquitous. And he used Vipassana as the kind of meditation that he did, but mostly, if you have ever done a Goenka retreat, you'll see that he spends 3 days on what he calls Anapana and leaves the word sati off altogether. And then he does 7 days more or less of scanning. And towards the end of the retreat, he does a thing called strong determination. And I don't see any Vipassana in there anywhere the way that the word Vipassana is used currently. We also can say that the word mindfulness is quite common nowadays. And I think that, anyway, you were referencing living Buddhist masters. Where is the reference? What were you talking about there, Chris?
I was saying today I'm reading a book called Modern Buddhist Masters by Jack Kornfield.
Uh-huh.
And it's a collection of 12 chapters, I think, of 12 people. I'm on chapter 3 now. Chapter 1 was Ajahn Chah's idea of what Vipassana meditation is. Number 2 was Sayadaw Mahasi,
Mm-hmm.
and there are others. And
Victor Buddhadasa is in that book also.
Yeah, he's chapter 4. Next. That's what I wanted to do today, but I came here instead to get it from you.
All right. Okay. I would say offhand that the word Vipassana has been mostly used with in the name of Mahasi. And Vipassana was used also by Goenka, who was trained in Burma. And then you have a whole group of people that seems like the ones who have never been ordained, don't know anything about Buddhism other than they paid $7,000 or more to get a certificate, and they use the word mindfulness generally. Many of them, in fact, are social workers and have included mindfulness as part of their psychotherapy sessions. So let's look at Vipassana first. Vipassana means going, like passage, into. And it's often referred to and or translated into English as insight. Now, uh, uh, the first thing to say is that the word vipassana does not come into any usage at all in either the early works or up to the Buddha's death. That the word vipassana seems like that it had become usable about 100 years or so after the Buddha's death, and that it was used in relationship to samatha, and the word samatha actually is part of the suttas. Now, the word vipassana um, actually has the quality of, can you see what you're doing? And the answer to that, the analogy that I often give is, in old-timey cameras, when the film was not very good, in order to get a good clear shot, you had to have the lens open for as long as a second to get a good quality thing. Now, the camera had to be on a tripod, and people were told to hold still for a while. So we can think of now as our own life is that when we're looking, we're shaky, and that we have to get the mind settled down enough, having samatha or calmness or stillness, so that we can see clearly what our thoughts are. When we have defilements, uh, let us use the example of doubt, that it's hard to see doubt in and of itself as a hindrance when we're so busy asking questions about how to practice. Well, what about this and what about that? And we don't even see that those questions also have a quality of being shaky, being restless, worried. Now that leads into the quality of the hindrances, that they're all interrelated. The way that I would describe hindrances is kind of like a pizza that's got crust, and it's got pepperoni, and it's got cheese, and it's got tomato sauce and all kinds of stuff on it. And that the hindrances are like the whole pie, but we can tell individual things about it, like doubt or restlessness or greed. But they work together in the sense that if you want something that you don't have, then the likelihood of you having doubt and also restlessness come into play. Or if you don't like something and wanting to get rid of it, then you can see the restlessness and the doubt, perhaps the boredom, etc., like that. So one hindrance after another would be in play. And as that cycling and circling through the hindrances that the ordinary mind would have, they don't have the stability to see really what's going on in the mind. Now, the interesting place is in Sutta number 48, where the Buddha talks about it in a sequence that lead from the ordinary person up to the state of Sotapanna. And that the first item on the list is actually quite a major milestone. I would go so far as to say that that is, in fact, uh, the major quality, and that is that when we have these hindrances, if we have the attitude that no matter how hindered or no matter how obstructed the mind gets, the student has enough stability to see that these are hindrances and know that he can get out of them. All right? Now that's a good practitioner, someone who has really made a lot of progress. And the way that it's stated is that um, the student knows that no matter how obstructed the mind is, that he can remove those hindrances and see things the way that they truly are. Then the Buddha says that this is a step on the path. That's a remarkable statement. He also says that this phase of knowing that you can remove the hindrances is noble. It's a factor of the path. And most importantly, this is a mental attitude that ordinary people never have. Ordinary people are always looking for the outside, looking for things to blame, looking for excuses, etc., like that. But when a practitioner practices enough, he will come to the position of knowing that this is a hindrance and that I can get rid of it and come back and see things the way that they actually are. Now, the first thing that I want to say, and then we'll take some of the questions. I'm surprised already we have questions. That this is the first step on the path. If you're very, very liberal about it, you can say that if somebody has taken the first step on the path, then this is the first step of Sotapan. In a way, someone who has this attitude of, I can clean out my mind, is already a Sotapan. He's taken that first step. Hadn't gotten very far, but that's the first place on the path. Amrit, go right ahead.
Yeah, my question is it related to also self-view? Because my understanding was that the first step is people get understanding that the self-view is a view, it's not really the truth of nature. So is there a connection between what you said, that you have an attitude that you can remove the hindrance whenever you see them, with a self-view? Or
I'm not quite sure of what you're asking. Mikey, can you help? This microphone is a little bit echoey, muffled.
Are you saying, Amit, with the extinguishment of self-view, that there's no longer hindrances?
yeah, is these two things are connected? Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Well, we could say that backwards and make more sense out of it. And that is that when the mind is obstructed by hindrances, there is self there. And that when the mind is free from hindrances, the freedom from the hindrances is also kind of freedom from the self in that moment. All right? Ivan, you got your hand up.
Yeah, so when it comes to the five hindrances, let's say doubt, for example, sometimes I find, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like the Buddha have made a distinction between some form of doubt that can be very, very harmful to the path, as in like very self-sabotaging, and it's best to throw them away once you see them, versus a kind of doubt that is okay to have around just for a certain period of time because it's just inevitable, and then you can just get back right on the horse. So I guess my question is there like a level of hindrances where it's okay that it is there and there's no need to get rid of them, versus a type like, is my question making sense?
I would say offhand that if you understand doubt as a hindrance, and what we mean by the word hindrance is hindering a person or hindering the student from being in an alive state, hindering him from being in reality. So, in regard of doubt being a hindrance, all doubt is a hindrance. It also has the quality, as I was mentioning, of wanting something. That's why we start asking questions. It also, doubt has the quality of looking outside of oneself for reasons and answers, or to blame. Doubt is really a great big blame game. That, as I had mentioned before, and I'll state it again, that there's actually 3 levels of doubt. The first level of doubt is, where can I get someone to help me? This is a very young child's position. They want help from mommy. We want help with our homework. When we're adults, we want help from a Jesus. We want help from a lawyer. We want help from a therapist or a guru. We want someone to help, which has the underlying position of being a victim who cannot help himself. All right, so doubt at the lowest level also has a quality of fear built into it. That's why you could say that the hindrances are more like feelings and mental attitudes than they are thoughts. But the kind of thought that would come up if you have the hindrance of doubt will be questions. Example of that is, who can I get to bail me out? Who can I get to help me to feel better? Who can I get to solve my problems that, by the way, I created? But since I created them, and I'm doubtful that I did create them, I'm trying to find help to get me out of the mess that I've created for myself. All right, so this is ordinary doubt. The second level of doubt, which we'll cover, and then we'll cover the third level of doubt later. The second level of doubt, once we get over that, and this is a basic position, it doesn't raise one from the state of ordinary, puthajjana, low-class, stupid person up to the noble level. Doesn't do that, but it's at least a step in the right direction, and that is that once you realize that ain't nobody going to help you come out of any of your problems, you're going to have to do it yourself. The second level of doubt is, guess what? Am I up to the task? Am I good enough? All right, so this Dhamma dude that we were talking about earlier has overcome both of those levels of doubt when he says that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can clear the mind out and come back to a level of reality where I can see clearly the way things are. So, Karwan, go right ahead.
My thing was, I'm thinking about critical thinking. Is critical thinking also a form of doubt? Yes, doubt,
exactly.
but then in a positive. But is it also not positive to have some critical thinking? I mean, that's necessary to.
Actually, in the ordinary world, yes. Okay. But in fact, you could go so far as to say that philosophers and teachers teach you to have critical thinking in order to be able to tell the difference between the lies that you've been told and what's actually real at an ordinary level. This is critical thinking. However, almost always that critical thinking that we are taught, we turn that backwards into being critical of oneself. Are you good enough? Are you up to the task? Who can you get to help? Etc. like that. So what we're saying then is that critical thinking, while it has some value at the ordinary level, it has always the ordinary level. It is not noble. The noble first step is that step where we have the point of this hindrance, no matter how obstructed these hindrances are, I can clean them out and come back into reality. I can see things the way that they really are rather than seeing things through the lenses of these levels of doubt. So critical thinking then is just another level of doubt. And that we can change that level of doubt into removing of the hindrances would be also the quality of removing critical thinking, because critical thinking actually is very, very closely related to doubt. I doubt what the preacher is telling me. I doubt what the principal is telling me. I really doubt what that cop is saying. All right? That's what ordinary people do. Is that it's beginning to determine the difference between the reality as it is and the authorities who are lying to us. And there are an awful lot of ordinary people who can do that. In fact, this is one of the important points of the training of a psychotherapist, is to be able to tell the difference between when a client is lying to them and when the client is telling them the truth. Well, that skill then is put out into the therapist's ordinary life so he can begin to see when people are lying. There's also entire educational systems like the CIA and others like that who are trained to be able to interrogate people, to be able to see the truth even through the lie. All right, so these are ordinary skills that have nothing to do with the Dhamma. Like I said, the first step on the path is to see that critical thinking, especially the critical thinking that we have turned on ourselves, and be able to remove that completely, so that no matter how much obstructed the mind is by critical thinking, we can come out of that and come back into a peaceful state and see things the way that they really are. Now, the reason that I'm saying this is because in this Kosambian Sutta, number 48, there are 7 layers or 7 knowledges the Buddha talks about that lead one up to the state of Sotapanna. The second knowledge actually uses the word samantha. Now, what we mean by that is that once the student has been able to see the hindrances and knows that he can remove them, then the second layer, the second one, would be the knowledge that they have been removed, and now I can see clearly. I can see reality as it is. I can see that I'm okay. This is where in TA with Eric Byrne that I was trained in, they moved from the critical thinking into the nurturing thinking. Everything is all right. Everything is fine. I'm okay. We call it nurturing. Now, you can see then in this regard that critical thinking is a kind of an agitation. It's a kind of doubt. It's not peaceful. But once you bring the mind into a peaceful state, once you bring the mind into a steady state that is free from the hindrances, we would call that a state of samantha. Now, there's a little bit more to it than that, and that is that you've heard me talk about jhana, and other people talk about jhana. Most of the ones who talk about jhana really don't know what they're talking about because they don't do the proper research. And so there are actually either 5 or 6 points about what is the first jhana, and that the most important one is free from these hindrances, free from the agitation, free from the worry, and that we apply the mind then to the wholesome. We apply the mind to being steady, and with that comes the quality of sukha. Now, sukha actually is part of the attitude of I can do this. No matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can come out of it. I can come out of that state into a peaceful, happy, comfortable state that is free from worry, free from fear. It's a feeling of safety and security. It also has the quality of comfort, leading immediately or very soon into the state of satisfaction. Now, satisfaction has that quality of being stable. If we're dissatisfied, that has a quality of being in movement, being agitated. And like that camera that's not on a tripod, if we are in that state, then our mind is shaky. It's shaky with the hindrances. And when we're free from the hindrances, the mind will become stable up to the point of satisfaction. Now, with sukha, I want to make a special point about the word sukha here, and that is that sukha in the Pali language, in the Thai language, and in the Gujarati language, and I suppose if I got someone who spoke Sinhalese fluently, they would say it's true there also, that sukha is exactly opposite of the word dukkha. Dukkha actually means dissatisfaction, and that's agitation. If you're dissatisfied with something, you want it to be changed, you're in a state of wanting, you're not steady, you're not stable. And so, in a way, you could say then that the first jhana actually then is the entire teachings of the Buddha, because the Buddha says, I only teach one thing, and that is dukkha, dukkha, nirodha. I teach only one thing, and that is to see the dukkha and to come out of it. Come into a state of satisfaction. Well, guess what? In Sutta number 36, the Buddha specifically says, in fact, it's called the story of the rose apple tree, where the Buddha reflects wholesomely that when he was a young child or a young man or possibly a teenager, he did have a state of first jhana, and now he recognizes that that's what the enlightenment really is. Enlightenment is having that sukha, being free from dukkha. So the first jhana is always enough. That's the way that we look at it. In fact, when we're in a state of satisfaction, it's good enough. That gives us stability. That gives us the samatha. Also, being able to stay in that state, to apply the mind to this and to sustain it. And occasionally what will happen is that we'll have an instant thought of, whoopee, this is so great. And that's the piti state. Those piti states don't last long, but they do have the quality of, whoopee, wow, this is so good. And then we come back into that, relaxation, everything is okay. Now, the sixth item of the first jhana is actually relaxation, to become relaxed. Relaxed in the body, relaxed in our feelings, relaxed in our mental attitude, and relaxed in our thoughts. So, if we have then practicing the Eightfold Noble Path leading us through anapanasati practice with these four foundations of body, feeling, mind states, and the mind content, then that's the fulfillment. We have not used yet the word Vipassana. Ivan, go ahead.
No, just now you mentioned about like standing on shaky ground, and for me, I feel that every time when I somehow my mind is in this world, I don't know how else to say it, like as if like I am attached to this world. I don't know. It just feels like every time I remember the Dhamma that it just this detachment from what is happening here. and suddenly it
Yeah,
doesn't
the
feel
world, by the
shit.
way, is a pretty shaky place. There was even a soap opera years ago called As the World Turns. It's constantly in flux, constantly in motion. Can we, in fact, in a world that's constantly in flux, constantly in motion, can we bring the mind to a steady, stable place?
It's like a burning house, right?
Yeah, the house that you're in is on fire, but you can just walk out of the house and watch it burn. Come out of that hindrance, come out of that burning fire. All right, so, Karwan, go right ahead.
Well, I have a small thought. You know, the things that you are saying are, in a way, you know, the people who smoke marijuana, who smoke weed, I think they also are sometimes in a state of just being relaxed and peaceful and happy, or at least they pretend to be. You know, I've also smoked.
No, they're stoned, and we know what the word stoned means.
Yeah, but they say also report that for some it is also very pleasant feeling, and the feeling of being just relaxed and
just relaxed. Okay, all right. Well, guess what? I'm not going to go into this lecture today right now, but I will say that the precept that was added, the Buddha had basically, if the mind is clear and clean and stable, then you're unlikely to kill someone, you're unlikely to steal anything, you're unlikely to mess with someone, you're unlikely to lie, you're unlikely to have language. Okay? In that talk, he didn't talk about alcohol. That the fifth precept, Sura Nirya Macha Pamatadana Ve Ramane Sakavadam Samatiyami, was added as a precept possibly 100 years after the time of the Buddha. But even there, Sura, Nirya, and Macha, you can think of beer, wine, and spirits, or hard liquor, wine, and beer. Okay? The Buddha did not make a precept against marijuana. And marijuana was rampant in the time of the Buddha, used. It still is in India. Okay, but the Buddha did not. In fact, in the Vinaya, or the Vinaya, depending upon which part of the country you're in, there is a medical section, and in the medical section, it allows for smoking pipe.
Wow. Okay.
Now, what would the monks in the time of the Buddha be smoking? They didn't have tobacco. That wasn't until the New World. All right, so I'll leave that as part of it. All right, but we can go back and look at the possibility of being stoned. And when you're stoned, you're pretty relaxed. But the mind can still be free from hindrances. But if you are practicing correctly, you can actually use marijuana and remain in the state of first jhana easily. It is not, marijuana is not necessarily, let us say, a hindrance in the sense that it leads to heedlessness like alcohol does. You cannot be drunk and in the state of first jhana, but you can be stoned in the state of first jhana.
Oh, that's really great. Yeah.
All right. Now, I am
So
not
I'm going,
advertising marijuana. Don't
them
come to my
everywhere
house
now.
thinking I'm going to sell you a bag of weed. That's not where I'm coming from.
It's very easy to get here. So I see you next time. I'm stoned here. You know, next week. Yeah.
All right. So,
Can I say something about that, Dhammarato?
yes, go right ahead. Get me out of this.
So I got a lot of experience in people being stoned or being stoned myself, especially when I was a student. But there is a little downside on it. The downside is you feel really relaxed, you feel really fine, and everything's okay. But then when it's over, when the weed or the grass has done its thing and it's
Yeah,
over,
after a couple of
then you
hours,
get-
it
then
wears
you get
off,
a-
doesn't it? And you're right back where you were.
you get a lashback. And then you want to smoke again because you want to feel that again. And also your dopamine reservoir has been turned down and you have to pull that up. So you feel really bad. You get really like a hangover, also from weed and grass.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Exactly.
mentioning. And you don't get a hangover when you're practicing the Dhamma.
All right. So what we can say then is that if we can use marijuana just enough to know what it's like to be in that state, and by the way, this leads into the next point of when you got when Dietrich is sitting there on the couch, she's happy. Everything is already okay. You're not motivated to go do anything, which means the mind is not full of hindrances right then. If you can remember that, then why can't you just get yourself back into that state without the grass? Can you talk yourself into or think your way into or put yourself into that state of relaxation? Then you don't need the grass. You could say that the grass would help you to understand what kind of state you want to get into. Now let's do it all by ourselves. We don't need the grass. We don't have to have that level of doubt of, oh, I wish I had a joint so I could relax. The marijuana is going to make me relax. Oh, no, I can do that all by myself. Okay. Now, this is the point then to bring in Vipassana, because we're talking about that kind of insight is that I can be relaxed and I don't need the weed. Or I can be relaxed and I know how to get myself into relaxation. That's a kind of Vipassana. In fact, that's a really good kind of Vipassana. To where mostly people think of Vipassana as having some magical, big, great big insight that just changes everything. Well, in a way, oh, I can relax. Isn't that a huge insight? Isn't that first step a huge insight that no matter how obstructed the mind gets, I can clean that out and come back into a state of reality? Okay, so when Vipassana did come into common usage, it actually then made its way into the later suttas in the Anguttara Nikaya and the Samyutta Nikaya. And in the Anguttara Nikaya, it has the point about Vipassana that Vipassana and Samatha work together. It says is that if you have one without the other, then go get the one you don't have. And if you don't have either Vipassana or Samatha, then work on getting them both together, which is exactly the way that Anapanasati would practice. The Buddha never used the word insight, but the word is used in the sense of seeing that you can relax, seeing that you can be satisfied, seeing that no matter how obstructed with hindrances the mind gets, you can throw that stuff out and see things the way that they really are and then relax. That's the Samantha part, is to relax. And when you're sitting on the couch stoned, that's one of the qualities of being stoned, is that you're relaxed. The cops come knocking on the door and you're too stoned to even get up off the couch to answer their knock. Now, there's another side of that, and I think that, Dietrich, you know what I'm talking about, is that people can get stoned and then go off and do activities like driving a car, or maybe real work like a shovel or a pickaxe or whatever like that. And when the body is active, when it's doing something, guess what? The stone goes away. When there's adrenaline in the body, the adrenaline actually destroys the state of being stoned. I don't know any physiology about it, but I do know that when someone is stoned and really active, then the stone is not there. Now, the guy can light a joint, get stoned, drive down the road, and now he's paying attention to the road, and the stone is not there, but he can park his car, take a few deep breaths, and the stone will come back. For a little while, but over about a 2-hour period, now the marijuana is completely eliminated. So you can think of it as a temporary, possibly a temporary help, and that the Buddha did not make a distinction. He did have a distinction about alcohol, but he did not disqualify or bar the use of marijuana. If he wanted to, he would have. But in fact, he allowed for a smoking pipe. And like I said, I'm not sure what the monk smoked in that smoking pipe, but marijuana was ubiquitous. It was all over the place then, and still is now, all over the world. No matter how many laws have been made against it, it's still all over the place. So it's part of human nature and has been for many, many, many centuries. So let us now go to the third point, and that is the third level of doubt. And this is also the third knowledge of the sutta that we're talking about. And that is that when we do finally have the insight into the Eightfold Noble Path, when we can really see that the Eightfold Noble Path works, and that's the third knowledge. The way that it's stated in some of the sutras is the knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path. Knowledge and vision of what is the path and what is not the path. This is a very important point, okay? Because that, in fact, eradicates the doubt for your whole life. You'll never have any more doubt if you know exactly what to do. You know exactly what not to do. If you stay on the path, and every time you can remember, let's take a deep breath, let's throw out the hindrances, let's come to a state of satisfaction, let's stay relaxed, everything is cool. That's all there is to the entire teaching of the Buddha. That's the whole show. Now, just to gain a little bit further insight, the fourth knowledge, by the way, I invite every one of you to look this up, the Kasambian Sutras, number 48 in the Majjhima Nikaya. Now, the Buddha talks about the fourth knowledge in the way that when the young monk goes to a confession and gets his wrongdoing off his chest, whatever he's done wrong. But in fact, the way that the Patimokkha is structured is that the monks will find a senior teacher and get whatever they've done off their chest, so that when they go into the Patimokkha ceremony, everyone there is pure because they've got it off their chest. Everybody is pure. But in fact, that's stated in the sutras. You probably heard that, Chris, where the Buddha looks around the assembly and says, everyone here looks pretty pure to me. Does anybody here have an objection to that? And he never gets an objection. Everyone assumes that everyone there is free from their wrongdoing. Now, this is an important point, and you've heard me talk about it. Let me talk to you about it again in the sense of, remember in the first part of the lecture that we were talking about critical thought? Isn't it when you catch yourself in wrongdoing, aren't you being critical? If you can see the hindrances and you're critical of the hindrances, you're saying, gosh, I'm in those hindrances and I hate it. Well, guess what? You're just further into hindrances right then. The question is can you become free from those hindrances? Can you go into a state of nurturing? Goenka talks about it in the sense of when the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again. I'm actually saying it in his tone of language. I think Anna's heard that many times. When the mind wanders away from the breath, never mind, start again. Now, what that has is that quality is to forgive yourself for the fact that the mind has just wandered away, or perhaps has been wandering for years. Doesn't matter. Right now, you can see that the mind has been wandering away. Let's put it back into reality, which means that we forgive ourselves for all of our wrongdoing. We're not going to be critical of ourselves anymore. Wow, what a relief that is. How many of you have been critical of yourself? How many of you have been critical of yourself for, let us say, long term? It's almost a permanent state of being for many people. They're critical of themselves, and then they're going out with their doubt. Who can I get to help me to stop being critical of myself? Who can I get to help me for me to do something? Give me a pill, give me a joint, give me something or another so that I can stop being critical of myself. And the answer to that is to see that if you're critical of yourself, that's a hindrance. That's another word for worry, another word for restless, another word for doubt, is being critical of oneself for whatever reason. Whether the mind has just wandered away from the breath, whether you ate too many pieces of toast, whether you've killed somebody, whatever your fault, if you see a fault as a fault, then you're going to be critical of yourself, and being critical of oneself is not peaceful. It's not satisfying. So this fourth item is actually quite a major point of stop being critical on yourself. In fact, you already know what the path is. Let's just stop being critical of ourselves and just get back on the path. Take another deep breath and relax. Be satisfied. Throw those hindrances out. The funny part about this is that this is a simple process and it's easy to understand, but we have to practice. We have to do it over and over and over and over again. Now, the translations often use words like striving and diligence, but those words are not really good words to use. Don't be diligent. Don't strive, because that's kind of a critical thinking. The better way to do it is never mind, start again. Rinse and repeat. Just keep doing it over and over and over again. If you see you're critical of yourself, if you have self-hatred, say, aha, I caught that, and catch it happily. That's the real process. And when we do practice it enough, often, over and over and over again, that's when we get to the fifth state. And the fifth state, then, is when we become kind of dedicated to the Dhamma. Now that you know what is and is not the path, we actually have practiced it and continue to practice it over and over and over again, repeated often enough to where that's the major point in our life. Now, in the sutras, it talks about a monk who is sweeping at the wat. Well, while he is sweeping, he's not thinking about the sweeping, he's thinking about Dhamma. He's thinking about these things. He's thinking about keeping his mind clear and peaceful while he's sweeping. And then the Buddha has another analogy for this, and that is that when a mother cow has a baby calf, even though she goes out and eats groceries off the plain, even though she's chewing cud, eating her grass, she still has one eye on that calf. She's taking care of that calf. She's protecting that calf. This is also for you, no matter what you're doing, keep one eye open for the Dhamma, which means keep one eye open for the hindrances so that you can get rid of them again. Keep an eye open for when you get critical of yourself. Keep your eyes open to watch. Now, in a way, we could say, isn't that Vipassana? Except that it's not some kind of great big Vipassana as we practice, and getting deep insights. I don't know why the modern Western Buddhism talks about deep. The Buddha never talks about deep. We're not looking for deep insights. We're looking for an insight right bloody now. Can I see those hindrances and come out of them? All right. So the sixth item in the Kasampium Sutta, the sixth knowledge, is because we have become, let us say, repetitive, and we become, I guess I could use the word dedication. We add another word rather than dedication. We don't become dedicated to the Dhamma. We become eager. Eager. Eager to look at your mind. Eager to practice. Eagerness. Enthusiasm. That's the hallmark of this practice, is when you become eager to practice, and enthusiasm for the moment, enthusiasm for being alive. Wow, this is great stuff, folks. Practice well, and it'll become great stuff for you too. And then the seventh item on the list, the final knowledge of the Sotapanna, is the word delight. Become delighted with the Dhamma. Wow, this stuff is so good. Become delighted with your life. Become delighted that you are alive. Become delighted that you're okay. Karwan, you're okay already. Now that delight actually is a major quality. This is actually what you would call then, instead of a step on the path of Sotapanna, this is the fruit. The real fruit of Sotapanna is that you're on your toes and you're doing it happily. You're doing it full of enthusiasm, and you're delighted with your success and progress. That's what a Sotapanna is one who is, what I guess, steeped in the Dhamma or deep in the Dhamma, but we don't have to use those words. The better word to use is the word that the Buddha used. Delighted. Become delightful. How many people are delighted right now? Amrit, do you look delighted? Okay, so that's the whole path. So let's get some feedback from this. What do you think, Amrit? What is Vipassana for you now?
For me, Vipassana is to look right now, look at the Mara, and send her away.
Mm-hmm. Aha, I see you, Mara.
Yes.
I see you. That's the quality, is that we can see these hindrances, but you can see them and be delighted that we can see them. Because if you can't see the hindrances, you don't have a chance of getting rid of it. You're back into a state of agitation. You've got no Vipassana. But when you can see the Mara, when you can see the hindrances, then that's Vipassana. It's always in the moment. It's not deep. It's not some profound insight. It's the insight into what are you doing right now? Can you get the mind stable enough so that you can see what you're doing right now, to be able to see these hindrances? Dietrich, do you have a comment?
Yeah, it feels like a light, joyful state. And if there's any wrinkling on the line, any hindrances, that you notice them and get out of them. And you always know that you can do that.
How about you, Rick? Are you still on Koh Samui?
Oh no, I'm not on Koh Samui. I'm in the Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Yes, yes.
Is that the
yes.
place that doesn't exist?
It does exist.
Nether. Not their land.
Yeah. Holland, I guess you could call it too, if that does exist.
I think it has more to do with not in the hills.
Yes, it does. It does, exactly. It's very flat. So the name accurately describes the country, I would say.
Mhm. So what do you
Um,
think about the word Vipassana now?
what do I think about the word Vipassana? Yeah, I kind of would echo what Deirdre or my mom said, and just be like, I would add the feeling of success as well. A feeling of like, I can do this, and I'm a winner that I can do this.
Yes, absolutely. Martin, how about you? Where's your girlfriend, by the way?
Sorry, Dhammarato, what did you say?
I said, where's your girlfriend? She's
Oh,
often on the call with you.
oh yes, no, she's downstairs. She thinks you can read her mind, so she's she's a bit afraid.
Well, what does Vipassana mean to you?
Yes, it's to see right now what's happening, and that having no hindrance is good enough, and it's a wonderful state. Just not to be afraid, just not to want something. It's already good. It's good enough.
Well, Chris, did I answer your question?
I don't know. Let me try. I'll tell you what I heard, and you tell me if I'm right. So
You're right.
the question was, what is Vipassana meditation? And what I heard
didn't
was,
say everything. I never said the word meditation at the end of it. Vipassana meditation is something that somebody made up.
okay.
All
So
right. I will say this, that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa back in the 1930s during a trial of sorts specified that the Buddha only taught one kind of meditation. He didn't teach more than one, only one. And that method of meditation is anapanasati with the Eightfold Noble Path. And he sparked a huge controversy in the Thai Sangha. That in fact he was in Bangkok around the place. They for many years they've had 9-year level program of Pali, and so all the Pali students in Thailand did the research, and they came up with that he's right. There is only one meditation that the Buddha taught, and that is Anapanasati. He did not teach a Vipassana meditation. That's made up, most likely by a Westerner who has never been ordained, or ordained for only a month or so. So, anyway, so much for Vipassana meditation. Go ahead.
oh well, so basically, yeah. That's what I was gonna say. I think I heard that Vipassana as a meditation technique that is distinct from shamatha is a hoax.
Yes.
Uh,
Well, let's say it's a
Vipassana
fallacy.
as insider prajna, that's a quality, yes, but as a meditation technique, that's something that was made up when the British invaded Burma, and the Burmese, when they lost all their funding and power, they were like, we better teach the lay people to meditate for a change, because Buddhism is going to be eradicated from this country if we don't do a better job at spreading the word.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what led up to what eventually became Vipassana meditation, what we call now when people run 10-day retreats.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of grew out of that. That's what I can determine from reading the things I've read. So is that
Okay.
halfway right?
Well, I'm not disagreeing with any of that. It is actually, I wouldn't call it a hoax, but it certainly is made up.
A well-meaning
And
hoax.
most importantly to say it's not the teachings of the Buddha.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Well, we've got a lot of people up there. Anna sis, tell us, what is Vipassana? Is it what Goenka teaches, or? Well, hi. Good to see you.
Well, for me, Vipassana, seeing things clearly.
I could barely hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes?
Yeah, well, for me, Vipassana is seeing things clearly, and which is seeing reality, and so seeing sankharas rising and falling.
And you're seeing them right now. And the next moment you do a new Vipassana because you're looking again and seeing something new,
Yes, absolutely.
as opposed to a 10-day meditation retreat is not Vipassana.
Yeah, yeah. But is there something to do with sankhara rising and falling, or no?
Well, you could say then in the way that we're speaking of it is Sankara then are those hindrances,
Uh-huh.
a big pile of them.
Mm-hmm.
Another way of thinking of it is that the Sankara is actually all of the stuff that makes up memory, which is in fact those hindrances.
Mm-hmm.
But I haven't used the word Sankara at all in this talk.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Because from what I understand is that hindrances and the fetters and sankharas are the same.
Let us say that Sankaras in and of themselves, all by themselves, are neutral. But normally we turn them into hindrances. For instance, an arahat who is unaffected doesn't mean that he has no memory, he has no sankara, he's got a whole pile of stuff. He just doesn't allow it to get to him. All right, so Karwan, you got your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to say something about the Goenka meditation. One of his teacher, I think the teacher, the fourth, let's say, not his teacher, but the teachers of him, and I'm the teacher of him, Lady
Ubaken was his teacher, and
yes,
Lady
and then,
Sayadaw was above that, or
yeah,
earlier than that.
Lady Sayadaw. And Lady Sayadaw, the thing that I've read about him, he was actually not a meditator. He was a smart guy who was just reading a lot. And from that reading, he made up those meditations. So he himself actually was not even meditating. I don't know if it's true, of course, or not. But so he himself was not even practicing. And he became even blind at the end of his life. So he was basically useless and doing nothing. And just...
I'm blind. I guess that makes me useless and nothing.
Sorry, but yeah.
All right, so I had not heard about Ledi Sayadaw in that regard, but it makes a lot of sense because no place in the suttas is anything about scanning. There's only one line in the Anapanasati Sutta where that entire scanning system comes from, and that one line states to understand, to train yourself to be able to know the body. And that the reason that we want to train ourselves to know the body is so that we can practice. In the fourth item on the Anapanasati list is to relax the body so that you can see your tensions, you can relax. Go ahead, Chris.
But doesn't that also get translated as the body of the breath? So the full cycle of in, pause, out, pause.
Yes, and there's been a major controversy over that mistranslation. Now, the question is to know the body versus know the body of breath. In almost all regards, our tensions, our anxiety is in the body of breath. Now, where is the body of breath? It would be from the top of the nose, maybe into the sinuses, which is part of the breath body, down to the lower diaphragm, which is where you're going to find your tension in the neck when your neck gets tight. But there's also the possibility of knowing that you've got your fist balled up because you're angry, and then you can relax your hands. How many people, when they go to the dentist, I guess everybody's gone to the dentist, What about your hands? What happens with your hands? Don't you grab the stirrups or grab the armrest and hold on tight? Okay, that's not relaxed. Do you know you do that? So, by the way, the word body of breath is in brackets in the Anapanasati Sutta that was done. The editor of that was Bhikkhu Bodhi, and the translation was done by Nanamali back in the 1950s. And that Ajahn Thanissaro had a long discussion with Bhikkhu Bodhi years ago, and Bhikkhu Bodhi's answer to that, and actually it was in the 1990s, because that's when that translation came out. And Bhikkhu Bodhi then agreed that he should take that out, the knowing the body of breath is not in the sutta. That's something that was added by the translator. Guess what? We're now on what, the fourth or maybe fifth edition? It's still there. It was never removed. Bhikkhu Bodhi said he would have it removed, and he didn't. I'll leave that up to you. All right? But there is no controversy. It's just a bad translation. The Buddha did not say of the body of breath, and in fact, Anna and many others have done a Goenka retreat. Doesn't Goenka go down into the legs and down into the feet, down into the hands? Doesn't he do the whole body? Anna, go ahead. You got your hand up. Anna's, by the way, is an old hand with Goenka.
Yes, so I just wanted to add about the Goenka method. Something that I keep from it and helps me is you know, when it talks about sweeping all over the body without any hindrance. I think it's really helpful in relaxation, actually.
That's what it's for. That's the whole point
Yes.
of it. But you can relax the body without doing the sweeping or scanning. You can do it by just knowing the body, where it's tense, when it's tense, and to intentionally relax it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I see no argument there.
No, absolutely. That's what because I just try to, you know, discern what is good and what I want to keep from this or that. And no, there is no contradiction at all.
Yeah, there's no contradiction. So we can come back to that point that I make often is don't worry, be happy.
Absolutely.
Okay, Michael Swift, what about you? Do you have something to say? Michael, are you there?
I'm here, Dhammarato. Nothing to say. All good
right.
here.
Okay, how about you, Ben?
Nothing to say, just be here now. You don't need Dhammarato to read your mind. Read your own mind and do it happily.
Yes, I can read minds, but normally what I hear is a bunch of static. Not a clear signal. So, Paul Nat, what do you think?
Nothing to add. Just grateful for the Dhamma. We'll continue to practice and practice happily.
Is this your first call?
Yes. I've been with you for 2 years or so. But yeah, first time I'm joining a call.
All right. Well, welcome. Glad you're here. So, does anybody have any last remarks? Any additions? Any birds to show me? All right, Mikey, why don't you take this thing home?
Yeah, happy to see friends today, smiling and enjoying the Dhamma. This is a very enjoyable call. If you would, go ahead and check out and continue to play with OpenSanghaFoundation.org. If you haven't, make a profile, add a profile photo, put some contact info there, and get to know people, make friends. We continue to have people helping with the website. Ben just started recently helping us with adding new facilities, so thank you, Ben, for that. And if anybody else is interested in doing that, we've got plenty of facilities to update the data on. But yeah, there's all sorts of watts and books to read and audio and video, people to chat with. So yeah, go have fun on OpenSanghaFoundation.org. Thank you, everyone.
Yes. One of the developers, by the way, has leveled a criticism of the website. He says it's got too much stuff on it. People will never find everything. And my answer to that is, go look. And go look again. Repeat. Keep looking. There's huge amounts of stuff there. We've got groups, we've got suttas, we've got videos, we've got transcriptions. We've got a huge PDF library. Much of it is Bhikkhu Buddhadasa.
Yeah. Yeah, I recently put up a new translation of the Tao Te Ching as well. So if you guys want to branch out a little bit, there you go.
There's nothing to the Tao Te Ching. All right, well, thank you all very much. I'm really glad we had such a big crowd today. At one time we had 16. That's not quite a record, but it's close enough. All right. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.